I think one of the really cool things about working in digital photography is having the ability to shoot in what's called the RAW format. Now, RAW doesn't stand for anything, like DNG stands for digital negative or TIFF stands for tagged image file. RAW just means raw data from the camera. It's a really good format to shoot in if you can. Not all cameras do it, but if you do have the ability to shoot RAW, we need to do something up front. We need to set up our preferences. Now, for example, all of these images, and they were shot in Chicago's Union Station, basically are RAW because of the extension NEF. I shoot with Nikon, and the extension NEF is on the Nikon files. If you're shooting Canon, it actually says RAW. And you've probably been here, but if you double-click on one of these, it will open it up in the RAW plugin, and then we can begin, playing around, changing it, trying to fix it, and make it work the way we want it to work. But before we get here, we're going to do that. Let's do this. Let's look at how we set up some of the preferences that are available in Bridge. So let's go to Bridge. We can do it this way, browse in Bridge. And go into the Bridge CS6 option up here if you're on a Mac, or go to the word Edit if you are on Windows, and go down to Camera RAW Preferences. The first one is Save Image Settings in a Sidecar or in a Camera RAW database. Now let me show you a sidecar. If you look at these two files right here, that's DSC6229NEF, that's the file, that's the image. And underneath it is DSC6229XMP. This is the actual image, the data of that image. And this is the data that changes the image. So anytime we work on an image using the RAW plugin, it basically creates either an XMP sidecar file, that's what I just showed you, or you can leave the information in the RAW database. And let me explain why you might want to do one or the other. If you move your files around a whole lot by physically moving them from the folder they were in, then I would suggest the sidecar. But that means you have to move both files if you want to keep that information. I do that a lot, so I use that option. If you don't, or if every time you move an image, you move it from the Bridge, then you can leave it on this one right here, and that'll be fine. Either way, if you do move an image from the Bridge, that information will go with it. Apply sharpening to all images or previews. I like to control what I want to do with sharpening. And so I usually say preview images only. I'll decide if I want my actual images sharpened. Now the previews are actually like what we call FPOs, for placement only. When you're working in a program such as InDesign and you move an image in, you're not getting the 2 GB image in InDesign. You're getting what's called a preview. So I don't mind if it sharpens the previews, but I'll decide myself if I want to sharpen anything else. Of the defaults here, you've got Apply Auto Tone Adjustments and Apply Auto Grayscale. I like to control the autotone myself, but I do really think that this one is actually pretty good. Incidentally, we're looking at all the defaults, and I'm changing now from defaults. I usually turn that one on because I think it works pretty good. All digital cameras have a serial number and an ISO setting, ISO speed of the film. You can actually make the default specific to a particular camera, which is kind of cool when you think about it. Camera cache, right here, the RAW cache, that's helping the images work. It's helping you move and work faster when you're in the RAW plugin. You can purge that if you want to, kind of starting all over again, and you can decide where you want the location to be. Digital negative files. Do you want to ignore the sidecar, that's that XMP file, when you're opening a DNG? I usually do. I want to start the control of the image from the beginning, so I usually check that one. And on Update Embedded JPEG Previews, I like to go to full size. Now again, that's that for placement only document I talked about. I typically work on images that are a couple of gig, and to me, another half a meg is not really going to make that much difference to get that really nice preview. So I usually put that at full size. Now down here, we have something that's relatively new. It's actually been there for a version or two, but it's automatically opening JPEGs with settings or TIFFs. We have the ability to open up a JPEG image and or a TIFF image in the RAW plugin. And you might think, why would I do that? Because RAW is these nice 16-bit images and they have all this color information, where JPEGs are actually lossy compression. And TIFFs are good, but they're not RAWs. There are settings in the RAW plugin that even JPEGs and TIFFs can benefit from. So what it's saying here is, if you do this and you change an image, it will have embedded data. It's called parametric image editing, if you want to know the technical term. When you edit an image by creating instructions for the adjustment, that's the XMP, rather than adjusting the actual pixels, you're working what's called parametrically. And in this way, camera raw images are edited and they're used with other file types. So let's say you worked on this image, and let's go to another program like Lightroom. Lightroom allows us to use raw settings on a JPEG or a TIFF. When you open it up here in Photoshop, do you want it opened with those settings, or you just want to open up all supported, or do you want to disable that? It's up to you. I leave it on settings because if I've done something like this in Lightroom, I probably want to see it applied when I begin working on it in this program, and it gives me consistency in the way it looked. You can disable those or turn them on if you want to. Many of these settings are really based on your personal workflow, and this is my workflow. So you change these based on how you think they'll best benefit you when you're working on raw images, JPEGs, or TIFFs. On to the next.